for joining us for another episode of Ecoville, your environmental conservation program. I'm your host, Nosigelelo Kwaka. The global electric vehicle market is valued at over $160 billion and is projected to reach over $800 billion by 2027. American company Tesla is one of the biggest manufacturers of electric cars in the world. Electric cars remain rare in most African countries. South Africa is thought to be the largest electric vehicle market on the continent, with only 1,000 vehicles having been purchased by 2019 out of more than 12 million vehicles on the country's roads. South African-based electric vehicles manufacturer Agilite Africa have partnered with a local company Zimtalk to start the manufacture of electric cars, motorbikes and scooters, which will promote the use of clean energy in vehicles. Today on the program, we have Zimtalk founder Mr. Tanaka Kutama, who will discuss this issue further. Where is the factory going to be set up and when will it become operational?
Okay, it's going to be set up just outside of Harare. We're still trying to identify where exactly, but most probably either Harare West or Harare North. As you know, the government is trying to decentralize everyone out of the city, so we feel we're going to be a bit outside of Harare. As in operational, we are aiming by around about April 2022, taking in consideration the COVID lockdowns that are affecting movement of construction and everything.
Has work already started on the site?
Not as yet, because we've got two sites that we've identified. We are just waiting to confirm with our contractors that which site is ideal, which is where I said either in Harare West or in Harare North.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, what will be the production capacity and what kind of vehicles will you be manufacturing?
Our aim was to first work on the bikes, which will be maybe 1,000 a month, and then the cars we're looking at to start at 2,000 cars every 3 months, in which we're going to develop our own brand, and also we're trying to engage two popular car manufacturers to come in, which I cannot disclose at the moment as we are still in talks with them, but we are close to making that deal happen.
Okay, projecting just numbers, how many jobs will be created by setting up of this plant?
Well, this plant will create a lot of jobs. That is, number one, we might create about 500 for technicians for backup, and maybe 500 for the assembly plant, and then 500 for administration and police work and and quality control. So we're looking at about 1.5 job creation at start. Obviously, as production grows, job creation will also increase.
Okay. Will the car be affordable to the ordinary person?
Yes, as it's going to be manufactured locally, there's no importation of anything. We'll just be getting the kits, and probably the batteries will actually be accessing them locally, so it will be very affordable. We're looking at maybe to start at 20,000, 15 to 20,000 for the vehicle. Maybe the bike's around 1.5 to 2,000.
1.5 to 2,000. Mm-hmm. Okay, and for the car,
15 to 20,000.
But looking at the economic situation in the country, how many people can afford 15 to 20,000?
We are going to make it affordable because we are partnering up with a bank for financing. That is, even if you're self-employed, you can actually be able to afford the car maybe by paying maybe, for example, 200 to 300 a month. So that means you can afford to buy a vehicle. But obviously, as we start, it's going to be a difficult thing because it's not easy just to adopt electric vehicles, electric bikes. It's going to be a lot of awareness needs to be done, and also the support from the banks, as I said, because financial support is very important for even an individual to be able to afford a brand new car.
All right. So has the necessary infrastructure been set up, like charging stations?
Not as yet. The infrastructure that we've managed to supply is we've managed to supply one of the first smart chargers in Zim, that is to our regulatory authority, that are putting in place the regulations for people to set up charging stations, to set up EV dealerships. So for now, we can say there are no charging stations at the moment. We are actually in the process of making a charging network. So probably by September 2021, we'll probably have 15 charging stations for a start.
So with 15 charging stations, are we saying Harare or we're saying across the country?
We're saying Harare to Bulawayo, Bulawayo to Beitbridge, and Beitbridge to Harare.
So there are no charging stations currently?
There are no charging stations currently.
Okay.
For public use, no, it's mostly there for private use for companies that own the vehicles. But we are in talks with the necessary regulated authorities to say we have infrastructure sharing. So the current private charging stations can be open to the public. But most vehicle owners, the electric car vehicle owners that are currently driving these cars, they prefer charging at home, which has been happening globally. A lot of people have been preferring to charge at home because they use the car all day and then they charge overnight.
Okay, I've never seen how an electric car is charged. How do you charge an electric car?
Okay, it's like your mobile phone, but I can't say it's as easy like a mobile phone because there's a communication between the charger and the car. So it's more of your mobile phone and your laptop combined. So there's a lot of power involved. It takes in about, depending on the car that you have, let's say for example 6.6 kilowatts into the car. That's a lot of electricity just going into the car. But it's cheaper to actually have an electric vehicle than normal fuel car because you just take your car at home. It's about, from my experience, it's about $2.50 US to fully charge my car, which is a 24 kilowatt an hour, which travels about 135 Ks from a full charge.
So after talking about the manufacturing, what I wanted to know is, will all your cars, your bikes be 100% electric?
Yes, 100% electric, zero emission.
All right. Okay, after that, we'd also ask, are the spare parts available as well as servicing of the vehicles?
Yes, they are. They are very much available. We've made sure that for every car that we are bringing in, for now, because we're dealing with imports, the backup facility is there.
Do you provide servicing of
Yes,
the vehicles?
we do. Once you buy the car from us, the car will now be our responsibility in terms of servicing, and you service the car mostly at 20,000, sometimes at 30,000, depending on how you're driving, also and how you're taking care of the car. But in normal circumstances, the service interval is 30,000 kilometers, and it costs more or less $200.
Well, it's not expensive to
It's not
service the car.
expensive. Yes.
What's the lifespan of a battery?
10 years. After 10 years, you can buy a new battery if you want, or you can sell off the car to someone else who can buy a new battery, because the lifespan of the car is the battery. So let's say the battery is out for 10 years, you can buy a new battery which costs more or less 3,000 to 6,000, depending on the battery size that you want.
So battery size depends on car size?
Yes. Like normally you can have a small car with a big battery size. That means long range, because the bigger the batteries, the longer your range. Like for example, a Tesla has got bigger batteries. That's why it can do 500 Ks to 600 Ks on a full charge.
Right. How many kilometers can an electric car travel before its next charge?
Well, it depends on the vehicles. As I said, there's now a wide range of vehicles. Your entry level is your Nissan Leaf. You can do, depending on which year you've bought, you can do minimum 135. Maximum you can get an electric car that can do even 700 kilometers to a full charge.
So the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal number 7 talks of affordable and clean energy. Do you think electric cars will contribute to the success of this SDG?
Yes, because if you look at it globally, I was reading in 2020 when we had the total lockdown. You remember India recorded, I think, 0.03% of carbon emission because there were no cars. There were no bikes. There was no emissions from cars, because cars are the biggest contributor of emissions. Industries, you can find 4, 5, 6, 7 big buildings, big factories, that are emitting. But cars, how many cars are on the road? We can have 20 million cars, and if you multiply that with the carbon emissions, there's a lot of emission going into the air. So I think the goal can be reached. The cars, I think, are the first point of tackling green emission. We need to first start with our transport, because that is the most used form of whatever in industry.
So in manufacturing, are you just looking at private vehicles or public vehicles as well?
long term, our strategic plan is also going into buses, trucks, your recycling trucks, your mining equipment, your mining trucks as well. We're looking into that. We're not going to be limited to private vehicles only. We are also going to go to big trucks, because actually I attended a virtual launch of the Mercedes e-Actros, meaning Mercedes is a big brand. It's already going from private vehicles to commercial trucks, which I think, as I said before, is another contributing factor to emissions. So if we try and tackle all those things, we'll be home and try to reach the 2030 goal set by the United Nations.
Okay, what's the carbon footprint of an electric car?
The carbon footprint is zero. We can't say there's nothing. There's nothing.
But if it charges with electricity, is it
right? This is where the thing is, people don't realize. Yes, electricity is coming from coal, electricity is coming from hydro. But do they realize hydro is water? That's renewable. And then what you can do is to eliminate coal, you can bring in solar. With Africa, we've got so much sunlight that we can harness 100 megawatts in a week from a properly set up solar power plant, in which I understand Zimbabwe at the moment we've come up with what we call grid tied, whereby if you have excess power on your solar, you can put it back into the grid. So meaning to say, imagine 100 houses with solar, and then they give in maybe 10 kilowatts. If you say 10 times 100, that's about 1,000 kilowatts. That is going back into the grid, so which means you don't need to have so much coal being used. So in the long run, people are going to get used to it. To say, no, look, we are not polluting from the electricity we are getting it from. No, we're going to be using solar, we're going to be using hydro.
And there's been skepticism on electric cars because we've heard stories of Tesla cars blowing up. How safe are electric cars?
I've heard that question all the time. I always say, people, how safe is fuel safe? What's safer, fuel or electricity? Let me give you an example. If you are involved in an accident and fuel starts leaking, what happens? Car blows up. With an electric car, yes, it's somehow a bit more, it's somehow dangerous, but it's suppressed. They've made them so safe that even if you're involved in a serious accident, the car will probably not blow up. It will probably not blow up. But I can't say 100% they're safe. No, everything is not safe. Even the air we breathe is not safe because of, look at what's happening. COVID is everywhere. So, but there is one that's safer than the other, in which, from my experience, from what I've seen, I feel an electric vehicle is safer than a normal vehicle, because a normal vehicle has higher risk of, there's oil, there's fuel, there's gas emissions already in the car, there's fumes. With an electric car, there's no fumes. It's just an electrical shock maybe that can happen, but it's not as lethal as fuel. Imagine you got into an accident and then fumes start coming out, you won't be able to breathe, and then you're gone. With an electric car, there's nothing like that. There's no leaks of fuel or anything. So I feel both, they're not safe, but one is safer than the other.
All right.
Yeah.
In the long run, does it make financial sense to purchase an electric car instead of a diesel or petrol car?
Yes, it makes sense, because number one, the regulations very soon are going to be suppressing the fossil fuel vehicles, and secondly, as I said before, the lifespan of a battery is 10 years. That means you've got a car for 10 years. Maybe the battery degrades maybe in 6-7 years, you could still buy new battery cells and replace them, in which maybe a battery cell maybe $100 or $200. So it makes financial sense to have an electric vehicle. In terms of maintenance, it's way cheaper. In terms of running costs, it's way cheaper. In terms of remember, in Zimbabwe we had fuel problems. If you have fuel problems, you can charge the car literally anywhere. Even if you don't have Zest at your house, you can drive to the shops and say, look, can I charge my car? You can drive to a service station, can I charge my car? That's the advantage of having it. So it makes financial sense. And value wise, those vehicles, they don't really drop value quickly as your normal car, because you can change the battery and then it can be a brand new car and the value can be attained back again.
Thank you for joining us. We look forward to a time where the electric vehicle will be dominant, which will help us reduce carbon emissions. Don't forget to follow, subscribe, and like our pages on social media. We are available on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Our podcast is available on Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcast, as well as Apple Podcasts. Join us next week for another informative program. I'm your